Good morning, everyone. You're very welcome to today's SafeHabitus webinar. It's great to see so many people from across research, policy, advisory, farming organizations, and of course, farming communities themselves. As many of you will know, SafeHabitus was funded under Horizon Europe with a very clear and ambitious mandate from the European Union. In the original call text, the Commission weren't simply asking for more statistics about accidents. They were asking us to enhance understanding of the root causes and consequences of occupational injuries and ill health amongst farmers and farm workers. In other words, to get in and look beneath the surface of what was going on. And the reason for this is that agriculture has long been one of the most dangerous or hazardous occupations. Farm fatality rates have been consistently higher across all countries than in most other sectors. And yet, despite decades of safety campaigns, regulation, and awareness raising, what we've seen is relatively slow progress towards safer farming. And that tells us something really important. Knowledge or information alone is not enough. In other words, telling farmers to be safe or telling farmers to be healthier is not enough. We need to understand why risks persist, how they are generated within the food system, and what are the broader consequences that they have for farmers, their families, workers, and ultimately the social sustainability of the sector itself. So within SafeHabitus, there is a deliverable, deliverable 3.2, and you'll find that in the chat in a moment. And this report was undertaken by colleagues from across Europe. And primarily, it involves our 11 SafeHabitus communities of practice. And the research was led by Joe Firnhaber, who you will hear shortly. And what this report did is to apply a socio-ecological lens. In other words, we looked at how decisions and pressures at higher levels in the food system, so markets, policy, regulation, technology, climate, and economic change, how they interact and how they shape the day-to-day realities on farms. And one of the most striking findings was this, that time is a primary resource being exchanged between levels within this system. So in other words, farmers are increasingly experiencing job demand and what we call in the report systematic time poverty. So time isn't simply about working long hours, it's about how different demands come together. So how the job is changing and where those demands are coming from. And how then, from our point of view, that impacts on health and safety on farms. So that sets us up in terms of what today's event will be about. It's really to get a much better understanding of what's going on and the impacts that it's having on farmers, farm families, and the wider community. Before we start with the presentations, I would just like to set out some ground rules. So firstly, the webinar is being recorded, and that recording will be available on the SafeHabitus YouTube channel by the end of the week. Secondly, to keep your camera off and your microphone muted. But that doesn't mean that you're not participating. What we want is for you to submit your questions to speakers using the Q&A function. And then your questions will be answered during the Q&A session towards the end of the webinar today. And if you need to, please use the chat function for comments and to interact with other participants and also the organizers if there's anything that you would like to discuss there. So in terms of the structure of today, I'm going to be handing over to Joe Firnhaber shortly, and then we'll hear from a number of different people from our communities of practice in Slovenia, in Slovakia, and Romania, and also Poland. So we'll get a perspective from right across Europe, and then there'll be a structured discussion towards the end, and then also Q&A as well that will be moderated by John McNamara. And before I close, I want to bring your attention to some events that we have this week. So this is SafeHabitus's final year, and we've many events coming up. But there are two more this week. So we have two more webinars at the same time tomorrow morning and on Friday as well. So the first of these, so tomorrow we look at health and safety management priority needs in agriculture across Europe. And then on Friday, we look at risk management in a very practical sense in terms of how do we implement risk management on farms. And then on the 19th of March, we have the SafeHabitus Policy Workshop, which is around reducing farm vehicle and machinery-related accidents in agriculture with new technologies. So there's a lot going on there. And everyone, if you're interested in those topics, please join us. You're very welcome. And we will be sharing information and recordings from those sessions on the YouTube channel if you can't make it tomorrow or on Friday. So thank you very much. I'm now going to hand over to Joe Firnhaber. So Joe, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me all right? Fantastic. So thank you so much, David, for the excellent introduction to today, why we're here, and what some of the main findings are. I am Joe Firnhaber, as you heard. I led the conducting this task and organizing the research across all of our communities of practice here at SafeHabitus and coordinating all of the results of this research task into the final report, deliverable 3.2, which you saw Gianluca posted in the chat. What my presentation is mostly just going to cover is a lot of the terms. I'm going to talk through a lot of the pieces that David mentioned in brief in more detail so that you have good background for the main event, which is going to be our speakers from these different communities of practice to share the research that they did. So, sorry. In general, this webinar is going to follow the logic of moving from problems to solutions as well. As you heard David's overview of these, I wanted to also point your attention to how we are going to be bringing up problems. I'm going to be introducing these main findings of this report, which are largely a lot of the pressures that farmers face. And then our structured discussion after all of our four presenters presenting their own research is going to focus more on what possible solutions or good practices or interventions that are already in place or are upcoming or are necessary to address these pressures. So keep your ears and eyes attuned to not just the problems, but the ways that we can both practically, through policy, through interventions, address them. So I want to start with breaking down this socio-ecological model that David mentioned. This is important background for all of the presentations that are going to follow, and important to understand why this research is necessary and why these findings are interesting. So the goal of this research was to contextualize farm safety challenges. In our own Irish research that we did, we are one of the 11 different communities of practice that conducted this. One of our participants at the meeting said, it's never just the tractor. We were looking at tractor safety challenges and how these are contextualized not just as an individual problem, where someone might slip on a rusted step, for example, but as a much bigger, more complex and more challenging picture, which makes it more challenging to address through different interventions. So identifying how these problems all fit together and what the solutions need to be are what we're going to talk about today. So quickly, each of the levels in the socio-ecological model, we have the individual one, which is straightforward. It's the knowledge, attitude, skills, and behaviors of the person involved in the farm safety challenge. The interpersonal level is what surrounds them, their friends, their family, and the social networks that they are a part of. At the institutional or organizational level, as you might hear our speakers talk about, are the organizations, schools, workplaces, businesses that these folks interact in. Community levels, the spaces they move through, the cities, the neighborhoods, the resources, and also the social norms that are involved in the interactions in all of these places. And then at the largest level, we have the policy sphere, which would be federal, state, local legislation, but also other large-scale social changes, changes in society, changes in weather and climate. These types of things are at the highest level, which you'll also hear some folks talk about today. So using this model to look at not just a single event as an isolated instance, but as something that's connected to a much wider circle in society, this research wanted to understand how the causes and consequences of these incidents flow from level to level. So not just what impact might someone's community have on them, and how might that shape their propensity to act in a certain way, but how policy could impact community, how community could impact the farming organizations that people are a part of, et cetera, et cetera. In addition, we wanted to know what factors all the diverse occupational health and safety challenges that people face across our consortium that we've been researching this entire time. I'll get to that in a second. What these have in common. So we're looking not just at how all of these causes and consequences flow from level to level to eventually impact an individual, but we're also looking at what, for example, migrant workers in Spain might have in common with older farmers in Ireland. So with that in mind, what our research was with those two questions, it was a qualitative study with a total of 64 participants across these 11 communities of practice. And you can see our different SafeHabitus consortium members, or the countries that they researched in over on the right. This qualitative research concerned focus groups, expert interviews, as well as stakeholder consultations. The research was a very relatively straightforward process where, first, communities of practice identified a priority regional challenge or a safety need in their location that was relevant to a key population. So the example I gave in Ireland, we looked at tractor safety with older farmers specifically, because that's a group at risk of tractor safety incidents. So each country doing research identified a challenge and a key population impacted by this. And in the webinar coming up this week, you'll also hear more about these priority safety needs. So stay tuned. After identifying these needs, communities of practice conducted focus groups and interviews, identifying the root causes and the wider consequences, as well as the potential solutions for these farmers and workers. And they did this through the socio-ecological model that I said. So when we talk about root causes, we're talking about not just maybe not getting enough sleep the day before working and then having an accident. We're looking at what could have caused that person to not get enough sleep. What could have caused that? So we're following the kind of logical chain further back and identifying at what levels these things happened at. COPS wrote this analysis up and completed a national case study report. The summaries of these you're going to hear 4 of in the upcoming talks. Then I conducted a cross-national synthesis with the team here in Teagasc of these national reports and compiled deliverable 3.2. So what I'm going to present then is the cross-national results. You're going to see elements of these in the talks that each of our speakers are going to give. But these cross-national results are mostly what was in common. The second research question that we had back here, what was in common across them? So hopefully from this webinar today, you'll get both a summary of our overall results as well as the discrete different examples from 4 case studies. So The first thing we found in answering our first research question of how do causes and consequences flow from level to level, we identified a downwards cascade. Effectively, we identified a hierarchical model for agriculture here in Europe and two patterns to the causes and consequences of various farm safety challenges. The first one was top-down, where higher-level decisions shape consequences at subsequent levels of this socio-ecological model, flowing down to the individual, impacting their health and safety. The second one, less common across the different national reports, but still in several, was an intensifying cycle. This is where the consequences of safety challenges exacerbate issues at the level above them that then again impact the level below them. So this is a circular pattern. For example, a farm accident could cause work organizational challenges on the farm as the family or the workers or the managers try to balance who is doing what. And this puts further pressure, especially in family farming systems, on the injured person to recover. So that's an example of an intensifying cycle. Now, what these factors were, not just how the causes and consequences flowed, but what the factors were, the main one that we identified, as David mentioned, was systematic time pressure that puts increasing demands on farmers and workers working in the system. It was the most cross-cutting way that the system impacted farmers as a cause and consequence of occupational health and safety. Effectively, farmers lack sufficient time to implement safety measures because of these systematic pressures. And then these subsequent occupational health and safety issues further constrict their available time in that intensifying cycle. So these are our main findings. And I wanted to pass it off to our COP members to go through some of the regional findings from these different areas. So the very first is going to be our Slovenian colleagues, and I believe Tisa is going to present for us. So Tisa, would you like to take it away?
Yes, thank you. Okay. Hi, so my name is Tisa. I come from the research center of the Slovenian Academy of Sciences and Arts. And today I'll present the short analysis that me and my colleague Majda Černić-Istenić did. We did the analysis based on 6 interviews, 4 interviews with farmers and 2 interviews with different professionals that work with farmers. And we tried to focus on some of the most important challenges faced by farmers in Slovenia and the impact these challenges have on their mental health. So in this presentation, I'll mostly focus on the issues of overload, time pressure, and stress that farmers experience in their day-to-day lives. So one of the first questions that we posed to our interlocutors was a pretty wide question of what hardships do farmers in Slovenia face? But the answers of both the farmers and professionals that work with farmers were quite similar. One of the first answers they usually all offered is the constant pressure of the workload, as well as the long working hours, the responsibility they feel towards their animals and crops, and pressures that stem from policies and decision makers. These pressures shape the structure of their everyday lives and create a persistent feeling that one can never fully stop working. So our interviewers described how this responsibility extends beyond the physical workday of a farmer into mental and emotional availability, as they have to remain constantly alert to potential problems. One of the more important topics that also arose from our interviews was also the topic of digitalization. Digitalization is often introduced with the aim of reducing labor, but can paradoxically intensify the pressure that farmers feel. So, for instance, one of the farmers we interviewed described installing a digital monitoring system in the cowshed to make the work easier. But instead, they experienced constant inflow of push notifications and alerts on their phone. These alerts extended their sense of responsibility into the evening and nighttime rest periods. It interrupted their sleep and created a feeling of never doing enough. In this way, technology that is supposed to be a solution then even further blurred the boundary between work and rest and undermined the possibility of psychological recovery. The pressure is also reinforced by cultural expectations within farming. Since farmers often described a strong sense of duty, perseverance, and self-reliance, which discouraged them from taking breaks or seeking help both in their farming duties or in their physical and mental health. And it also made rest feel morally questionable rather than necessary. As a result, pressure was not only seen as a practical constraint, but also a social and moral one, deeply embedded in the farming identity. This constant pressure cannot be understood separately from the economic conditions in which farming takes place. Farmers described operating under persistent financial pressure, which is caused by low produce prices, rising input costs, regulatory demands, and uncertainty about their future. These structural conditions created a sense of chronic precarity and lack of control over their own lives. This precarity initiates what can be described as a sort of downward cascade, because farm income is often insufficient or insecure. Farmers and their family members frequently take on additional off-farm employment to stabilize their household finances. While the dual employment strategy does help economically, it significantly worsens the chronic lack of time. It reduces the time available for rest and recovery and increases the overall workload. Over time, this lack of time can contribute to exhaustion, stress, and emotional strain. For instance, in our interviews described facing burnout, depressive symptoms, and in one case, even suicidal thoughts. At the same time, cultural norms of stoicism discouraged farmers from seeking help, which also delayed intervention and allowed problems to worsen. Financial stress can as well contribute to tensions within families, conflicts between generations, and increased alcohol consumption as a coping mechanism. And alcohol consumption is proven to be a big issue in Slovenia, even more so in the rural settings. In this way, structural economic pressure translates into time scarcity, which then translates into mental distress and social strain. The precarity cascade moves from the structural level through everyday time use into the psychological and relational levels of farmers. One of the most important consequences of this cascade is the erosion of recovery. Farmers described how stress and exhaustion reduced their ability to work, but at the same time, their responsibilities and social expectations prevented them from taking sufficient time off. Some interviewees returned to work early after illness or burnout because they felt judged by others in their family or social circle and because they feared falling behind. This creates what can be described as a recovery gap. So farmers experience mental and physical strain, but lack the time, support, and what is felt as social permission to recover properly. The recovery gap is therefore amplified by stigmatization, where perceived judgment shortens or interrupts recovery. For example, with farmers returning to work early, it increases interpersonal stress and increases the risk of relapse with burnout. Digital connectivity further widens the recovery gap by extending work into the rare periods that would otherwise allow rest. The effects of this extend beyond individual farmers to the farming family and the farm system. our interlocutors noticed that stress strained their relationships, reduced time and emotional availability to their children, and in some cases contributed to isolation and withdrawal. Because farms depend heavily on family labor, the reduced capacity of one person can destabilize the functioning of the entire farm. So overall, our findings showed that farmers' mental health distress is not simply a result of individual vulnerability, but the outcome of interconnected structural, economic, and time pressures. Time pressure plays a central role in translating economic precarity into stress. Addressing farmer mental health, therefore, requires not only psychological support, but also structural conditions that allow farmers genuine opportunity for rest, recovery, and disconnection from work. Yeah, this is all from me, and I'll pass it on to the next person.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And up next, we have Miriam from our Slovakian team. Would you like to take it away, Miriam?
Of course. Thank you, Joseph. May I ask Anna Maria to show my presentation? Okay, so my name is Miriam Acsova. I'm from Slovak Community of Practice, and I'm going to present our research. So next slide, please. Within the research coordinated by Dr. Joseph Firnhaber, we conducted a study focused on the topic which arised from our priority needs, and it's farmers' awareness of OSH in agriculture. We focused on small and medium enterprises. As a background of the study, we took every findings we had from our advisory activities, but also from discussions during our community of practice. So at the beginning, we knew that farmers usually accept that intention behind all regulation is protective. Simply, it means they understand that the aim of rule is to prevent accidents. However, these rules are presented in difficult way, so the explanations are not clear, and farmers most often don't want which risk those regulations are trying to answer. That's why the practical meaning can be lost for farmer. We also knew that small farms face a high administrative burden because regulations are not specific to them. Regulations are too general and complex. Those regulations are same for almost all types of industries. It's not specified for agriculture. Another background is that in small farms, OSH responsibilities are usually managed by some employee or maybe the owner himself. And for those people, this is only additional task, some kind of distraction from the main farming activities. We see that farmers generally do understand the importance of safety, but they are not able to connect many of rules with actual farm life. This can cause selective approach. They simply skip certain administration tasks, especially when they are time-consuming and costly. For example, many of farmers picked up mandatory equipment inspections. They must be done repeatedly. They are sometimes very costly. They have to be done also during the warranty period of the equipment. Simply, they don't see any benefit from it. But also, we have to say, like when I'm talking about background, that some farmers quite often take those regulations and safety and health requirements more as just an administrative procedure. Their motivation is only to create documents for having proof in case of an accident. This means that employers follow the rules not for the well-being of employees, but primarily to protect the company owner from potential liability. This approach reduces those OSH measures to formality rather than proactive prevention. Next slide, please. To better understand these challenges, we and wanted to understand also reality of farmers, we have conducted series of the interviews where our objectives were first to assess the respondents' attitude and understand their approach, and also to identify potential solutions that could make guidance in this area more targeted and more effective. We decided to focus on small farms because big farms have usually enough budget for having these necessities covered with external services. We found farms with employees, and we complemented it by insights of several safety professionals. We were talking to safety technicians who are usually making training and advisory services, also audits. Next slide, please. Interviewers confirmed that administrative tasks consume significant portion of farmers' time. This is very important even during busy periods when the time is really limited and they must prioritize tasks. It means that not all procedures are completed exactly according to regulation. Professionals added that farmers often have only formal approach to safety training. Farmers themselves, not even their employees, do not always understand that safety rules exist to address real risk. Also, they do not understand the purpose behind regulation. The scope of the training is very broad, and when people don't see a direct connection to their activities, they simply lose attention. Another problem is that the rules are not regularly reminded. Sometimes over time, even farm managers are not aware of some requirements anymore. This leads to underestimation of risk, and false sense of security is dangerous. So in our study, there were identified main consequences, and it is selective or postpone compliance, but also underestimation of everyday risks. Next slide, please. As interviews followed and people starting to think with also like interpersonal and community points of view, interviewees were with their mind longer time in the topic, we have found out some solutions. The farmers expressed they would appreciate some practical and simple help, maybe kind of manual, maybe some digital tool that would lead them and allow them to stay safe without wasting time. Farmers also expressed a need for some balance between practical safety benefits alongside administrative needs. They want to have safe farms, but want to manage their time effectively. They simply not to produce papers without any connection to real life. Third solution, safety might be reframed in minds of farmers. Instead of being taken as a bureaucratic compliance, should be understood as a management of risk and also long-term investment. Farms usually manage finances very carefully and systematically, and safety should be approached in a similar way. Professionals mentioned that very easy internal control system with clearly defined roles can raise awareness between employees It means not producing the next kind of paper, but something what could help to employees. For example, very simple checking table adapted to everyday farm realities could strengthen proactive prevention. It's something what will every day remind to people what is going to happen if they wouldn't do what it's expected. Finally, more practical and context-based training was raised as a very big need. The training should directly connect requirements to real farm risks and daily practice and trained employees. Training has to be easy and training has used appropriate vocabulary. Next slide, please. So, to conclude our study, improving occupational safe and healthy compliance in agriculture is not only about increasing awareness, it's about aligning regulation with operational reality, about simplifying administrative processes, and also changing the perception of safety from a legal obligation to a strategic investment. Thank you for your attention. And thank you, Anna Maria, for changing my slides.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Miriam. So already you all are seeing how even, for example, the paperwork that's necessary as part of running a farm business is contextualized by much wider factors around, or just the implementation of technology on a farm doesn't just have immediate impacts, it has much broader impacts on health. Mental health. Next, I'm going to invite Alin and Mădălina, our Romanian colleagues, to present.
Thank you, Joe, for this introduction, and I will try to slides. I think our presentation should be linked with your introduction framework at the beginning of our webinar, and also with some of the points which already had been emphasized in the prior presentations. For example, the economic pressure and its relations with mental health in Slovenia. It's very relevant, I think, in relation with training barriers. And also the general regulations from Slovakia and how people position it in relation to this, to the implementation of these regulations. Our presentation will emphasize the need to adapt the training for overcoming these barriers, and it is based on several sources of information. First, we had several thematic SafeHabitus COP meetings and workshops in Romania. We also organized stakeholder focus groups, interviews with farmers, and farm visits. And we tried to extract and to put our findings in relation with what you already mentioned in the beginning, the SafeHabitus deliverable 3.2, and also with the feedback received in our transnational COP meetings in SafeHabitus. I think this all empirical and conceptual knowledge is very important for understanding training and how to adapt it. The main objective of our presentation is related to understanding better the causal factors and consequences of farm accidents, and of course to develop pathways towards dedicated solutions. In our very short presentation today, we'll focus on the relationship between systemic time pressure and barriers in the domain of education and training. looking at enduring obstacles related with occupational health and safety training, we found at least 4 categories of obstacles. The first one is related with the knowledge deficit in farm, and particularly related with health and safety, because there are a lot of other knowledge. There is a lot of knowledge on other issues, of course. The second category is related with particular features of agricultural labor and its impact on compliance with occupational health and safety regulation, and willingness to take part in training in this field. The third one is related with the evidence presented from Slovenia, as I already mentioned, occupational stress and mental health problems. And the last one, which is also extremely important, I think, is linked to governance frameworks that are not aligned with farm needs of sustainable functioning and development. The first category of factors are specifically related with the knowledge deficit. And here there are several components which can be took into account. First, we can make a distinguish between small farms and bigger farms. And from this point of view, small farms and self-employed agricultural people are in weaker positions because they have less structured practices and in general are characterized by a lower level of institutional oversight from the labor inspectorate. Also, in terms of professional training, they have a deficit. Mainly in relation with health and safety knowledge, because this is not institutionalized, at least in countries as Romania. Small farms and self-employed farmers rely mostly on community-based knowledge acquired through hands-on farm practice. And even if the workforce is professionalized, there is insufficient attention to occupational health and safety. We conducted several types of analysis, and this is definitely the case in Romania. From this point of view, there is the need to qualify trainers, to extend the network of trainers, and to adapt and have appropriate training materials. The second category of factors, which is related with particularities of agricultural labor, is derived from non-standard employment arrangements, which are predominant in the sector, at least in some of the fields of the sector, which creates barriers to training and, of course, health and safety training. Here we also can identify problems related with predictable employment trajectories within the same farm, or the high fluctuation of personnel and the use of seasonal workers during some periods of time. People definitely are more likely to be exposed to certain risks during peak season. And from this point of view, we also think that there is a need to adapt training in this relation, and we'll discuss it a little bit after. Occupational stress and mental health is already covered in our webinar today, and I would like only to point out that this is also connected with training, because this is highly linked to time pressure in agricultural work in general, but also with individuals' willingness to participate in safe and health training. Because, of course, the time pressure and high costs of postponing tasks are also determinants and significant determinants for implementing safety measures or for postponing this implementation, and which creates higher risks. The governance framework is important from our perspective, mainly because it's characterized by insufficient functional collaboration among public institutions, private companies, and farmer representatives. And within our COP workshops, farmers and farm representatives have reported lack of coherence between intervention measures and implemented policies, which has direct consequences in the lack of necessary support for implementing health and safety measures and improvements in farms. The coherence of these policies is important, and in general, it can be translated in difficulties or in facilities in implementing occupational safety and health training programs. Excessive regulations and bureaucratization is, on the other hand, another important issue for farmers. And this can be bypassed only by creating cross-stakeholder collaboration. In the closing of our presentation today, I think we should have in mind that we need to develop multi-layered strategies for different categories of stakeholders and agricultural labor, which includes, but is not limited, of course, to the development of tailored training programs that account for the type of agricultural work. And from this point of view, we have to have the content aligned with daily farm activities. We have to take into account workers' qualification level and ability, and the content, the training content, has to be delivered in farmers' own language register, and of course, to avoid overburdening schedules during peak season. The training has to be flexible and adapted to agricultural seasonality. Training programs that offer practical examples are needed, and this is one of the main issue with many programs in the field, that the farmers are not in the position to understand the applicability of the knowledge and of the content of these programs. The dispersion of workforce also possesses logistical challenges, and we have to diversify and to use multiple delivery channels adapted to the new realities, and you can add on this definitely, and we can discuss it during the discussion session. And last but not least, I think from our perspective, at least in Romania, we have to distinguish between future workforce, the young farmers, and who are now in education, in high schools or in universities, and those already active who are not longer covered by training programs. So we need distinct approaches and distinct training solutions for these people. Thank you very much for this time, and we are looking forward for your questions and to discuss it on. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alin. And as Alin said, this is something that we want to prompt, as I said at the beginning, to keep in mind solutions. One of the things I'd love to see in the discussion upcoming, in the questions upcoming, is a discussion around other solutions that you all have after. We'll have a structured discussion on this from each participant in this webinar. We'd love to also hear feedback from you all to brainstorm around these issues that we're all talking about. But we'll get to that first, or last in our series of case studies. We have Joanna from Poland, representing the Polish COP. Would you like to take it over?
Good morning to everybody. I will share my presentation. Yeah, okay. So as I said, my name is Joanna Makulska. I'm coming from the University of Agriculture in Kraków, and we in Poland, in our team, we conducted several surveys in farmers and with also representatives of various agricultural institutions. And today I would like to present a part of our results on the subjects on farm rushing, and that information comes from survey analysis, and they are partly supplemented by the information obtained from the institutions particularly dedicated to the creating occupational farm safety in Poland. So when we are talking about farm rushing, the question is what is the cause, and I would concentrate partly on this. What are the causes of this situation? I mean, rushing at the farm, and also about consequences. Consequences which are important not only for farmers but also for all farmers' families, especially children and older people. So I would try to concentrate on this subject. Okay, just did it work? I don't know. Oh yes, okay. So it was small mistake. So when we are talking about the farm rushing, the question is what is the reason? What is the cause of farm rushing? Of course, rushing usually is caused by time pressure. It's not only situation found in agriculture, but probably in many areas of our life. So time pressure. Time pressure, as it was found from our surveys, and we know about this also. One of the most important reasons is weather dependence. Agricultural work is very much dependent on the weather. Weather is it's different, so it can change from day to day, and some agricultural works should be done with a particular weather. So unfortunately, when we know that the rain or frost is approaching, but time is very limited and it should be done very fast, so it creates a time pressure. Also, there are a lot of works in farms, in agriculture, that are seasonal, so that should be done in a particular season of the year. When we are talking about the farm activities, farm duties, so if the farm has livestock, so there are everyday duties associated with livestock responsibilities like feeding, milking, and sometimes difficult situations associated with diseases, and usual physiological situations like birth of animals, and it also creates the necessity of taking time and doing something at a particular time. Sometimes also there is a lot of work to do at the farm, and the shortage of persons who can do that is visible. So labor shortages. It also creates time pressure and some limitations in this situation. Some unexpected situations like breakdowns of machines. Sometimes machines are out of order in a very important situation, and we have to continue our work, and something wrong happens. So it also causes delays and also causes stress, and the time pressure is observed. And also some economic pressures. There is a more general issues on dependence of market prices, contract deadlines, some obligations which are imposed for farmers. It also is important. And here I had I put it in italic, so individual choice, personality. yeah, of course, it's maybe not so important, but sometimes we can find a person who is usually in a hurry. So it is difficult for some persons to organize work properly, and it creates also some difficulties in a very peak period. And here are some examples. I said that I will concentrate mainly afterwards. I will concentrate mainly on the impact on families and children. And here's one of the examples. It's not so common, but unfortunately sometimes happens. Some tragedies in the harvest season or planting, or generally season of intensive livestock work or generally agricultural work. So there are some very dangerous situations associated with the farmers' families also, and unfortunately with children. And when we are coming back to our surveys, what are the consequences of rushing? So sometimes safety procedures are ignored, so they are not kept as it should be. Also, some people don't use properly protective equipment because it takes time. Sometimes even the machinery is not entirely it doesn't work properly at the moment. It is used. It is still used because time is going. So just to avoid some time pressure. So some farmers continue. Some farmers decide to continue their work even the machine is not properly prepared for that one. Sometimes also some works are done without turning off machines. It's quite important, and it also creates many risks if it is done like this. But for some people it's not so important. They don't think that it would be dangerous. And generally, summarizing this, if we are talking about the time pressure and the effects of this on workplace safety, so generally in that situation some activities shouldn't be done, or they wouldn't be done in a more quiet, more calm situation. So activities that seems unnecessary are often skipped. So people say that maybe it's not so important at that time. I am in a hurry, so I don't need to do that. It is not too dangerous. Again, the turning of engines for minor repairs or adjustments to the machine is skipped sometimes. No, some farmers don't think that it's really very necessary to install some shields, like very important. It's a PTO shaft guards. Here is the proper situation at this on these photos, but sometimes it doesn't look like this. What I said before, so getting on and off the tractor while running, and it also creates very dangerous situations and possibilities of injuries. What is also important that in a really peak season, during harvest or planting, mainly summer harvest, farmers are supposed to work much longer than usually. So it's not 8 hours, but sometimes even 12 or even more, 20 hours, or maybe not, but for a long time, sometimes during even at night. As we can imagine, working without breaks create dangerous situations, and are one of the reasons of injuries. In that time, some important rules are ignored, and some behaviors are not the same as it should be in a more calm situation. So that is also a very important reason. We are talking during our interviews. We are talking also about the possibilities to minimize time pressure. What we can do for that, just to minimize these difficult situations. So of course, better work organization. So to be better prepared for working is very important. So if there are any necessary repairing that should be done in winter or in more not so busy time, what was also mentioned that there are checklists prepared by some organizations dealing with safe and occupational safety in agriculture in Poland. So the checklist for some people are quite useful, and it could be used when working with machines and with livestock and in some other activities. And also, it's important that we should be aware that we can't control everything. So we can't control nature, we can't control weather. So sometimes it's better maybe not to do some work, not to continue work when it's really dangerous, or even the weather is changing and we can't do that. We can't do anything more. So we should to accept such situations sometimes. And what is also really very, very important is taking breaks. So it was described that even 15 minutes of break makes a very big difference. So it's very important. And also more general approach. I mean, more trainings, more increasing awareness, also mindfulness training, changing behaviors and habits. That could be also of any importance, in that situation. And what I want to emphasize, I've mentioned that was at the beginning, the time pressure affects not only farmers working directly in a farm, but also all farm family. So because usually in a very hot season, I would say, during harvest, only some other very, very busy seasons in a year, almost everybody who is working, who is living in a farm, if it's possible for them to provide assistance in a farm work, they do that. So even older people and even children are quite often involved in agricultural work, in farm work, in assistance in that very busy situation. So I would like to concentrate mainly on children, because that is a big problem. Traditionally, children often help with farm work, and it's not bad. It's probably there is a tradition, but it could be done, and it not necessarily it should create very dangerous situations. But on the other hand, sometimes children are unnecessarily involved in a farm work, and if they are involved in some assistance, it should be done very wisely. So we should be very afraid that something dangerous can happen. And even children are not involved directly in a farm work. Usually they stay alone during this hot season, during that very busy season, because parents just other members of the family are usually involved in work. So children are, I would say, just alone. They have a lot of free time, and they go to, sometimes they spend time, they go to workplace that is interesting for them. And if they are unsupervised, so there is no proper supervision, it can create dangerous situations with machinery, animals, chemicals, and so on. So what I said, if parents or other members of family are tired, are exhausted, not physically but also mentally, it's difficult to provide proper supervision for children. Now there are no special data, special analysis done by any institution in Poland on the number of accidents with children in Polish farms. But so we have only the old data from 2014, and at that time it was said that 1,400 children were involved in accidents. So it was yeah, I would say quite a great number. Now there are only the information from police and Institute of Rural Medicine, and they also emphasize that some dangerous situations, not exactly accident, but some dangerous situations in farm families are quite often that they are just observed in many farms. And when we are talking about the possibilities of minimizing this negative impact of time pressure, of rushing on family life, and especially childcare, so the most important thing which was emphasized by farmers or by the people we interviewed is raising awareness. It seems obvious, but not exactly. So sometimes parents, even they're adult people, and should be conscious about the consequences. It doesn't work always like this as we can expect. Also, what is very important and probably would help very much is to provide safe institutional childcare for farmers' children during this busy season. I mean, some activities for children in rural areas. And also what could be also quite helpful, but in a long perspective, is introducing obligatory teaching of farm health and safety in rural schools. There are a lot of activities done by many organizations, but there is no systemic approach for that one, and it could be probably quite helpful if we could tell directly to children about dangerous habits and what can be done, what is dangerous or not, what is proper or not at the farm, and just to increase awareness of some adults. So the list of jobs that children under the age of 16 are not allowed to do was prepared by the institutions dealing with this subject in Poland. And there is also a checklist that can be used in that situation. And also, as I was talking about the solutions, so summer activities for children. Of course, rural schools usually don't run regular classes, but if there is a possibility, there are some funds for that one. Some activities during summer holiday could be organized, and they are organized. They are not often found in Poland, so there is not so many examples of this, unfortunately. But it was emphasized that it would be, as I said, helpful and interesting solutions to minimize some risk. Some day camps, half-day programs organized by schools, sometimes local governments, sometimes NGOs, and other rural organizations like local fire brigades, rural housewife organizations, which are quite important, quite strong in Poland, also church organizations, and some other campaigns organized by volunteers or some other organizations. And one of the examples, of course, we can continue this discussion in the question and answer part, but there are some campaigns or some programs dedicated to children. One of these, which is I would say still quite niche. So there are not so many examples of this. There is a program run by students. So it's student volunteering. Students go to rural areas and organize activities for children, but it's really seldom. I would say that there are a lot of other activities run by crews and some other organizations, like art competitions and preparing some information leaflets and so on. But yeah, they are dedicated to farm families and especially children. Not only children living in families, but also those who come to rural areas from the cities, because villages are from time to time they are quite interesting destination for summer holidays, and that would be also interesting and very useful to give some information about dangerous situations also for city children, I would say. Yeah, so that is an area to discuss and to maybe to improve, because that is a big problem, not only farmers, but farmers' families. Okay, so thank you
Awesome.
for that one. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joanna. And Joanna got the challenging position of going last to review how all of this impacts all of these various systematic and organizational and policy and governance, how all of these different layers can impact people individually on the ground, literally, as well as their families. And also thank you for kicking off our short structured discussion on the solutions. So you presented several different really interesting solutions from Poland. We'll get back to you, Joanna, at the end if you wanted to add anything onto that, but I wanted to give the other three speakers a chance to share some solutions upcoming or in progress already in their region. So we'll go in the order that people presented. So first, I'd like to hand it over in this discussion on solutions to Tisa. You talked you talked about the heavy burdens that farmers can face with never being able to turn off, so to speak, with technology partially fueling that inability to turn off, but also other elements. What solutions do you think are necessary, or what good practice examples do you have active in Slovenia to share with us?
Yeah, so in Slovenia, we would like to highlight two examples of good practices that we have, and they both relate to the mental health of farmers, which I spoke about. So firstly, we have psychological counseling for farmers, which is run by the Chamber of Agriculture and Forestry of Slovenia. And it was actually developed as a part of a project led by the Slovenian Rural Youth Association, and our institution also participated in the project. So the psychological counseling actually operates on a curative and a preventative level, offering farmers advice on everyday challenges on the farm, such as, for example, how to schedule their work, but also succession, family relationships, and other challenges they face. So the counselor actually gives specific advice on running a farm and also offers psychological support. This counseling service began operating in 2022. And here I have also some feedback from a survey that was done in 2024. So after 2 years of its operation, not many farmers were very eager to participate in the survey, but the survey did state that out of 441 farmers that attended counseling, 45 then reported that it improved their lives. For instance, 2 cases of domestic violence and 2 cases of suicidal behavior were positively resolved. 3 farmers that were on the verge of giving up farming made some changes and continued to farm. They also reported better communication among family members, less violence. The counseling helped them solve more problems easily with less stress and improved the communication, improved their sleep, and they said they needed fewer medications for depression and other illnesses they faced. So in general, they emphasized that the support meant a lot to them, because they knew they had somebody they could turn to that stood by them and also understood them, because the counselor also comes from a farming background. And then the other example of a good practice is a project we're doing right now on our institute, so the Socio-Medical Institute. It's a project called Polja Muči, which deals with mental health of people who work on farms. We started off the project by doing some field research, and now we're going into the second phase of the project, where we are developing specific educational content aimed specifically at farmers and relating mostly to mental health literacy. So we'll have, for instance, educational workshops on different mental disorders, and specifically also a workshop focusing on stress on farms. Also, we have some some brochures that were written about mental health and distress on farms. We're also developing a webinar. Now these activities are all just coming out now in March, so we don't yet have any results to present, but yeah, we hope it reaches the intended audience. So yeah, our good practices mostly focus on empowering farmers in the field of mental health through education, specific advice and tips for seeking professional help. So they do not focus on the specific problems farmers face so much on a daily basis, resolving, for instance, the time pressure as such, but it kind of provide farmers with knowledge and tools that can help them maintain their good mental health and how to cope with stress.
Yeah, fantastic. And this is part of what we found and what's reported in the deliverable across everybody is that we really need solutions that both alleviate some of these pressures before they even reach farmers. But that doesn't change the fact that farmers are dealing with heavy burdens at the minute. So we need, because it's a multi-layer problem, we also need solutions at every layer, including helping people deal with the pressures that they're already dealing with right now. So thank you so much, Tisa, for overviewing that. Miriam, do you want to share a good practice or a solution to some of the challenges with governance and paperwork and bureaucracy or other related good practices from Slovakia?
Yeah, we have one, from my point of view, very nice example. It's not about policy and regulation, but about our main topic, which is awareness. And as we know, the best time to influence someone's awareness and system of thinking is right at the beginning. So that's would be essential to explain all those importance directly to very young people. So we focused on students of where the agricultural enterprising starts. We have several times discussed this issue at our COP meetings, and we were lucky that we have one very interesting member of COP meetings. In Slovakia, we have Institute of Agricultural Knowledge and Innovation. This is educational institution under ministry, and this institution provides training courses, including training for young farmers. The training course has several modules, and institute organizes regular trainings. Always a new group of students or young farmers is coming. And a representative of the institute, which was participant of our COP group, was very helpful. And the result of the discussion was addition of a new module focused on the occupational safety and health to the existing training. And after several trainings, we had the chance to speak with the lecturer of this module, and she, as also part of our community practice, has a different approach as people were used to. And she changed the approach from only talking about regulation and paragraphs and etc. She started to connect those regulations to specific risk and explain why is this possible, why is it necessary, and why is it helpful. And she said that after the courses, young farmers came to her and had more questions and were interested. So this is our, from my point of view, very nice example. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that. And this synergizes really well with what Alan's presentation was on about, fixing some of these. Actually, Alan and Tisa both brought up fixing some of these gaps in training, and you're using that to target some of these challenges around dealing with the regulation and all of that. So that's fantastic. Alan, would you like to continue on a good example from Romania about what could alleviate some of the barriers that you identified, what could alleviate some of this pressure, some of these cycles that you identified in training workers and the impacts that has on farms?
Yeah, thank you. And sorry for anticipating a little bit this question in a way in our presentation. I think in Romania we can definitely discuss about initiatives and probably good practice in addressing the issues related with education in agriculture. And from this point of view, there is a relatively big initiative focused on general education at high school level, because Romania has an extensive network of national network of such institutions. And I think their modality of implementing solution can be replicated and extended for covering also health and safety training. From this point of view, I think they can be a model, even if they are not focused on health and safety. The initiative is called, translated in English, We Grow Through Agricultural Education, and is implemented by a consortium with 5 quite big organization, and has multiple objectives achieved to date. They had already about 10 years of implementing initiatives in this area, and they were focused towards modernized agricultural education and to increase the attractiveness of farming for young farmers in Romania. The consortium includes World Vision Romania, Civitas Foundation for Civil Society, Junior Achievement Romania, the Romanian Center for European Policies, and it has the support from the Romanian American Foundation. Agricultural high schools was one of the main fields of intervention, and I think they are an example of good practice because they created a strategic framework of intervention, which includes multiple stakeholders and create premises for long-term impact. They targeted students enrolled in agricultural high schools in Romania and provided study visits, educational packages, entrepreneurial education, business incubators, and so on. They created a framework to connect high schools students with farmers for internships and practical exercises. Also, they provided training for teachers who were included in working groups, farm visit, exchange programs with other countries, and organized campaigns for informing the general population and other stakeholders about the importance of agriculture and agriculture education. And last but not least, of course, I think it's extremely important that they paid attention also to research. So they included activities, quantitative and qualitative research studies in high schools, on student practice activities, agribusiness, and the entire institutional ecosystem. I think from this point of view, and of course they had huge budgets to implement all these activities. And from this point of view, I think they managed to have a real impact and to reinforce this education in Romania.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think from
also...
Oh yeah, go,
yes,
Mădălina.
Yes, please.
Sorry for if I can also add another less known and less mediated example of good practice in Romania, which I have encountered through some meetings at SafeHabitus, and also from my mother, which is a professor at high school level at an agricultural high school. So there are, I have of 2 such examples. They're from the technological high school Ghenuța Coman from Murgeni, Vaslui County, and the College of Agriculture and Food Industry Țara Bârsei from Prejmer, Vaslui County. These are 2 high schools that have made contracts with local community farms. small farms usually, where high school children go and they practice and they see what work life looks like, but they also have they also receive OHS training, firstly from their professor, because the professor, the high school teacher, needs to make sure that the underage children, the children, the high schoolers, are safe in the farm environment, but also from the farmer, because the farmer also has responsibility for the high schoolers doing practice. So this is a really good example that is not actually mediated, because we have several, and usually these high schools are in the rural areas, and people and high schoolers understand and see firsthand how important the health and safety measures are on the workplace. That's about it. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. That's a great example of these types of solutions that are necessary to connect, like what a lot of you are saying is this connection between the general or non-farming population and the farming population, that bridging these gaps with education helps also addressing some of the knowledge gaps within agriculture as well, but also some of the other challenges that we haven't brought up directly in this, but that all of this is very related to, such as generational renewal. So we are doing pretty good on time. We only have 3 minutes officially scheduled for Q&A and comments. But so, Joanna, you had brought up lots of solutions already in yours. So if you don't mind, feel free to answer any questions, but I'm going to move off of the structured into the Q&A discussion. So John, if you'd like, for anybody else who'd like to raise their hands and pop questions into the chat or whatever, John, if you'd like to take it away in chairing the Q&A session for our last little bit of the webinar. And thank you everyone for your attention thus far as well.
Okay, no, thank you, Joe, and thank you all for your excellent presentations. Yeah, now, firstly, I'd welcome questions to come into the Q&A chat. No, just while I'm waiting, just my own background is in health and safety and labour efficiency, and I can definitely confirm that, you know, work organisation and safety go together. I recall a study that I've done myself, which shows that advisors said that simply that, you know, once farmers start to rush, accidents start to happen. So that's the way it works. We also have another study in Ireland, you know, which were former colleagues in Dublin City University. Joe, I think yourself involved. You know, 25% of Irish farmers in a cross-sectional study had burnout and 50% had sleep issues. So those are one. That is definitely the scenario. Could I do a little advertisement for next Friday, the 27th? We will be speaking about risk assessment, and, you know, our colleagues from Luke in Finland and ourselves, we will be explaining how we do practical risk assessment. No, just one thought I have now for the panel is the role of extension in all of this, you know. You know, farmers, you know, need supports, and, you know, extension is the way of providing it. And, you know, that requires policy. I'm working up along the social ecological model, you know, and indeed it might require legislation, you know, but farmers need support. In Ireland, you know, lots of studies done on labour efficiency, and maybe a third of farmers are very good, a third are moderate, and a third are weak. So supports are needed there. So maybe could I throw that at the panel, please? And, you know, any thoughts on that, the role of extension?
Yeah, who would like to come in to discuss the role of extension?
Maybe while the question is coming, there is a FOSS advisory service right across Europe, and, you know, that has an extension role to provide supports around EU programs, and maybe that has a role, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, if I could partially field that question myself, I think one of the things we talk about in the deliverable in terms of recommendations, and you can Maida also picked up on this in the chat, and this applies to extension as well, I feel, is that one of the things that we saw across all of these different case reports from different countries is that the situation across Europe for the supports available, and this includes like knowledge and educational supports like extension, putting research into practice, is very diverse. The situation is very, very diverse across Europe and across all of these different nationalities that we're working in, and the need for basically upgrading the requirements or the supports, the requirements for supports and the supports that farmers have available, and not standardizing it, because standardization then leads to other issues that we've talked about where, for example, legislation doesn't fit the needs that farmers have on their farms, from what Miriam discussed, for example. But improving the actual knowledge transfer across countries and sharing the good practices from countries that have really strong advisory services. Ireland, for example, as you know, John, as you have been integral to, has a really strong advisory service compared to some other countries. Other countries don't have those same resources. So this is one thing that we are trying to do in SafeHabitus, of course, is share these good practices and strengthen the tools that different countries have.
No, that is great. And maybe just to continue with the theme of extension, extension, traditionally has been involved in helping farmers to improve incomes, but it is broadly based. And I was taken by Joanna's comment about mindfulness training, and Tisa's reference to supporting farmers. In Ireland, we've had what's called On Firm Ground, but it's a program to support farmers through advisory services with mental health issues. So I think, having supports there that are close to farmers and that farmers respect in a broad range of areas, and, including, managing the farm to cut workload, I think is really important, and sure, if anybody wishes to comment on that, please do so. Yeah.
Yeah, go, Joanna.
Yeah, I don't want to take more time because I know that the time is closing. But just I would like to confirm these observations from John. So the same observations we have in Poland about the extension service. So they are much more concentrated on some assistance in economical production activities doing by farmers, but much less in psychological impact and psychological support of agricultural activity. So I think that is a big area for improvement, at least in Poland. So to provide competences for extension service to provide farmers with psychological mindfulness training and psychological support in their activities. Yeah, so I confirm that one. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
I think, well, I was just finishing that comment off real quick. Sorry to interrupt you, John, that I think this is something that I hear across everyone saying, that these connections between health and mental health and farming, between occupational health and farming, need to be put together. That safety, if there's one thing that this study demonstrates, is that safety is contextualized in a lot of different ways and in many ways works alongside health. So there's a reason we talk about occupational health and safety in all the same word, and integrating mindfulness training is a great way to do that. Sorry, back to you, John. I think we've got another hand up too.
Great. Let's see. Another thought I had, just, and it's again related to your presentation, Joanna, but the whole issue of climate change is coming at farmers also. That here in Ireland at the moment we've had persistent bad weather, and we find it hard to spread our manure on the land, and accordingly, farmers require more, I believe, storage facilities to do so, and that requires funding and that. So in order to solve work organizational problems, there is a need for first of all, business like farming, which is profitable, but also supports to make it both sustainable and climate change efficient. Is that a fair comment? Yeah. And climate change might affect different parts of Europe in different ways at different times. Okay, another area maybe I might just talk about that I've been involved with over many years is agricultural education. I think back in the late 70s, indeed, in Ireland, the government decided that farmers should receive training, and I'm glad to say that the services have been developed very, very well, over those years. There's many routes for agricultural training, and there's also third level training if people wish to be part-time farmers. I think in Alan's presentation, I think the role of education and training at all levels was emphasized. So I think that is a vital driver of change into the future. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree, John, both with that and also the previous your previous comment on climate change. I think that's one of the reasons why these different diverse approaches are necessary. I see Maida's hand up still. Can I come to you, Maida? Do you have a comment to add along with your comment in the chat? Maybe not. So also, I think not everyone has speaking roles in this. So if you have further comments, to put them in the chat and we'll field them. There's a comment from Pat Griffin. If I could direct this, John, you might be one of the best to field this. Yeah. So Maida, if you want to make further comments, you can type them in the chat. John, Pat asks in the chat. Ad hoc systems
now it's working.
Oh, there
working.
it is, Maida. There you are.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I just
wanted. Hi, Maida.
Yeah. Hi. I just wanted to support what Joanna already said, that the views on the farmers needs to be changed. Let's say gradually. So far, farmers are seen by extension service as well as the policy makers, policy shapers, as the producers mostly, and not as the human beings. So this needs to be transformed in the further discussions and further search for solutions, that farmers of all ages and all genders needs to be seen as a persons. And from this point of the turn of the thinking, many things can be changed. So this is just my intervention here.
Yeah, good to hear from you, Maida. And, I totally agree with you. I think everybody must be dealt with as a human being, and that, and maybe in the past, internationally, extension was all about production. But I think that is an outdated concept, and there are many strands, to extension at this stage. Thank you. Now, Pat's
very
question.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Pat's question. Yeah, Joe.
Oh yeah. So Pat poses a really interesting question and challenge for all of us to answer. That ad hoc systems, as described as we've mentioned here, implemented in some of our different regions are fantastic, but they need to be established on a permanent EU-wide system, as Maida's previous question said, as well as I talked about implementing these good practices across various countries systematically. How can we, and SafeHabitus in general, ensure such a system is established? I've given only one comment, which one of the ways in which we do this is in this deliverable 3.2 and also in one of the other ones that we handed in deliverable 3.3, which is not involved in this webinar, but we report directly a sort of timeline of policy changes that could be implemented by different groups within EU. So for example, immediate policy solutions that can be done right now and who would be responsible for implementing these, longer term solutions, etc. And this is especially important when it's related to time pressures, because as we've overviewed, it's not just multifaceted in terms of the socio-ecological model, but people could be dealing with challenges that arose years ago, and the solutions to them, yes, it's necessary right now, but also longer term solutions to prevent a bad situation happening years down the line are necessary. So that's why we present our policy solutions in a sort of extended timescale. But did anyone else have a response to Pat of how can we ensure that this wider system of solutions across Europe is implemented?
No, would I comment, please? No, I think, you have the deliverable has been produced and delivered to the European Commission, and we're having this webinar today, which will be recorded, and it can be brought to the attention of policymakers right across Europe. So, at that high level, I think we're making the findings of the deliverable widely available to everyone, including today's webinar. Thank you. Yeah. Are you okay with that?
And thank you to, I was just saying thank you real quick, looking at the chat. Thank you to both Keith and thank you to Keith, who's posted two really interesting comments for people who have been reading the chat, two really interesting comments on updating us from just over the water from here in Ireland in Great Britain over the past 40 years, different resources and good practices that they have to address some of these similar situations as well. Sorry to cut across you, John.
No, I was just going to say hello to Keith, and indeed I'm delighted to see that Mr. Alan Plum is present on our webinar as well from the UK. But I think I read the first comment by Keith, and he talks about dealing with small-scale farmers, and quite obviously, and I think this was stressed, in the presentations, that dealing with small-scale family-type farms is different to dealing with big corporate farms. And I thought what the point Keith was making was that you've got to find a motive for health and safety, for the family farm, for them, rather than very big bureaucratic procedures. You've got to find a protocol for family farms that would adopt. Now, he also mentioned, I think, a very important point, which I believe needs to be developed, and that's, intergenerational kind of renewal regarding health and safety. A lot of health and safety comes from parent to sibling, as it were, and I think that there is that information is strongly in the literature also. So thanks, Keith, for your comments.
Great. And everyone, I wanted to thank you so much for your participation I wanted to give some time for this discussion to play out, for us to manage some of these comments in the chat. But I also understand that we have gone well over. So thank you so much for your time and attention. I wanted to throw it back to if David has any closing comments here to close us off as the head of SafeHabitus and to finish us up.
Okay, well, listen, first and foremost, I would like to thank all of our speakers today, and I particularly want to thank Joe for putting together what was a really interesting program. and for bringing together many of the people who are working within SafeHabitus through their communities of practice to share their knowledge and their experiences. And it's been really, really interesting for me to hear the differences that we see across Europe, and to hear about the different focuses that people have, and in terms of the discussion that we've just had, some of the potential solutions here that, you know, we can begin to think about adopting ourselves or learning from each other. And that is really what is at the heart of SafeHabitus. And in that vein, it's great that we've got so many people from outside of the project who have engaged with us today and who have also shared their views and some of their knowledge as well. So really, really appreciate that level of engagement. I want to also thank our colleagues in ADL for the work that they've been doing behind the scenes, bringing us all together, setting up today and getting all of the materials around the program and the speakers and posting on social media as we've been listening today. So big thanks to particularly Gianluca and Anna Maria for all the work there. And then finally, it's to say, I hope I see you all again tomorrow. So we have another seminar tomorrow, and that was flagged already. So we'll be hearing from Jarkko Lapella, our colleague in Luke, and we'll be looking at, well, what are some of these needs related to farm health, but also farm safety tomorrow. And then on Friday, as John said, we will have another webinar. So with that, I'd like to close off and thank you all once again for a really, really interesting webinar. Thank you very much.